Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video, and today's video is a recommendation video, and I'm going to be recommending the perfect books for Halloween spooky season. So I'm going to be recommending thrillers, fantasy, sort of horror, dark books that I just think would be ideal to read at this time of year, especially if you are on the hunt for these kind of books. And I 100% have an agenda here to just try and get you guys to read some of my faves. I can't lie, that's really what's happening, okay? So to start off, I have to talk about one of my favourite trilogies of this year, actually probably my favourite trilogy of this year because I haven't read any other trilogy, and that is of course A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I have not stopped talking about this book since I read it only a couple weeks ago, and yeah, you're probably not going to hear me shut up about it anytime soon. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, I really loved this. This is a YA murder mystery thriller, and it really knocked me off my feet because I didn't think I was going to love it anywhere near as much as I do. I think YA thrillers can have a lot to them and they can be fun, but I feel like there's always something missing for them to be a favourite, and this just had like the whole package. Basically, we follow this girl called Pip who's 17, I think, at the start of the series, and she selected this case that happened in her small town 5 years before the start of this book to do her school project on. So it's just about her trying to figure out the missing pieces of this case where this girl in her small town went missing and still has never been found, and the boyfriend who was the accused murderer who ended up committing suicide, if he really was the one who made this girl disappear. And it is so much more than that, but I really just don't want to give too much away. This book looks a lot more outside of the case. So book 1 in the trilogy focuses on this case, and then book 2 and book 3 you see other cases that Pip has gotten herself interested in and is looking into. But this book also really expands upon that and looks at the criminal justice system and the injustice of the criminal justice system and the unfairness and the messiness of it, and how people aren't black and white and how they're grey. And one of the most satisfying things about this trilogy was how full circle the trilogy was. Like, that is the most satisfying thing for like the last book in the series to have for me, and I loved it. I felt like each book really stepped up its game, and yeah, I really can't recommend this enough. The audiobooks are fantastic. That's how I consumed this whole trilogy, so I highly recommend them if you're interested in them, and yeah, go read them, please. Next up, I wanted to recommend a sort of dark horror fantasy book, and this is The Child Thief by Brom. I read this book over a year ago now, coming up to probably 2 years in a couple of months, and this was in my Peter Pan retelling video. So yes, this is a really dark horror-esque Peter Pan retelling, and what's amazing about it is there is a whole bunch of artwork in this story as well, which just really brings the story to life even more. So here we have our Peter, and the concept of this is, I just loved it. Basically, the concept of this book is that Peter steals children. He sort of gives these children option to leave all their difficult circumstances. So we have a lot of children who are homeless, we have a lot of children who are living in abusive families or in abusive situations, and he gives them the option to come with him, but it's kind of not all as it seems. The island of Neverland isn't this fantastic sort of wonderland place. It's a really dark and scary place where the children have to fight for survival here, and it's almost like survival of the fittest. But this also looks a lot more at Peter, and it goes back to how Peter's sort of origins and how he became who he became to be, and I just loved it. I remember really loving the atmosphere of this book and just the really different side to Peter that you don't really see in a lot of retellings. Well, I found from the ones I've read that Peter is really romanticized, especially his like romantic relationship with Wendy, and this just looks at his dark side, and I loved that so much. I did read this in a vlog. It was in my Peter Pan retelling vlog, so if you want to hear more thoughts, especially thoughts that were fresh as I was reading the book, I will leave a link. Yeah, but this was like my favorite book, I'm pretty sure, from that vlog. I really liked how dark it got. I think that's what I really love when fairy tales have retellings, is when they go dark, because there are a lot of dark sides that I feel like are very interesting to explore. Next up is another book that, if you're familiar with my channel, you're probably familiar with that book, and that is of course The Girl Who Drank the Moon. I read this last year. It was one of my favorite books of the year. It's definitely like one of my all-time favorite middle grades, if not my all-time favorite middle grade. I don't know, maybe. I love this book so much. It has Studio Ghibli vibes. I've said that ever since I've read it. And so if you love Studio Ghibli, I highly recommend you read this book. It's got also witchy vibes, which is why I thought it would be perfect to recommend for Halloween season. This book tells the story of this small village where they sacrifice a baby to the woods in order for the witch of the woods to take. I can't remember if it's like a once a month sacrifice or once a year. I have a feeling it was like once a year. And we follow this the latest baby that's been sacrificed, and she ends up being taken in by the witch. The witch isn't evil like the villagers have believed for so long, and what the witch has actually been doing is she's been taking these children in but giving them away to families and other places in other villages. So none of the children have ever been taken and killed or sacrificed for the witch in any manner. And this particular baby, our witch decides to keep her because this baby accidentally drinks moonlight and becomes magical herself. So the witch decides to raise her in order to like protect her, but also so that when her magic starts to come into place, she has someone to guide her how to use it and such. So we follow the witch and this young girl who's called Luna as Luna grows up and sort of learns more about the world, but we also follow the villagers and we sort of see what it's like for them having to deal with these babies being sacrificed once a year. We see like Luna's mother and what that sort of does to her, and oh my god, this book just had like so much to it. You know when you watch a Studio Ghibli movie and the concept might seem quite simple, but the message of it is a lot deeper? It gave me that feeling, and the writing and everything was so beautiful and atmospheric, and yeah, you need to read it. Next up, I have another thriller murder mystery book, and that is The Devotion of Suspect X by Keigo Higashino. Now, this book is not a stranger to my channel, especially recently. This is one of my all-time favorite thrillers. It is fantastic. It is translated from Japanese, and I don't want to say too much, but I'm going to say a little just to convince you to read it. Even though this is a detective series, we really don't focus much on the detectives. The real focus on the story is really the people who are involved. What I loved about this book is you know the murderer from the beginning, and then you see the police side of things and the police trying to investigate this case, but you're sort of rooting for who the murderer is and you don't want them to get caught. I will explain a little bit more. Basically, we follow a divorced mother who is constantly being chased down by her ex-husband who wants money, and he pretends to want to be involved in her life and her daughter's life, and something goes wrong one night. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. It's really differently told and differently structured to compared to other thrillers, and that's what really hooked me and my attention. So it was just so intense the whole time because you know who the murderer is. The police don't know, they're trying to investigate it, but you don't want them to figure it out. It's just so good, and please read it. Now, next up, I want to talk about a book I don't think I've ever mentioned on my channel, but I used to love this book when I was 17. So yes, it has been quite a while since I read this book, but I really just want to recommend it. Especially if you're on the hunt for a ghost book, this is perfect. And that is Anna Dressed in Blood. I really want to reread this book. Maybe I'll do it. I've been thinking about doing like a vlog where I reread like 17-year-old or 16-year-old Nicole's favorite books, because this was one of them. This is Anna Dressed in Blood, and we follow a boy. I don't even remember his name. Anyway, he is a ghost hunter, and so he goes around moving from town to town. He's like a 17-year-old boy who's like a ghost hunter, which is like so kind of ridiculously unbelievable, but you know, you go with it. It's YA fun times. And he ends up finding a ghost called Anna, and of course it's he doesn't want to kill her because, you know, there's a bit of romance that happens between them. I honestly don't remember too much more than that, but I loved the characters and I loved the relationship. There is a sequel to this book. I actually think it's just here. Let me just get it out. I can't even remember what it's called. Girl of Nightmares, I think it is. Yeah, Girl of Nightmares. So this is the sequel. I think this shouldn't have existed. Like, I still distinctly remember thinking that, because the way this book ends, it ends perfectly like a standalone. So I definitely recommend you can just like read this as a standalone and you don't have to like continue this unless you want to. But I loved this book so much, and I really need to read this again, and I need to find more ghost books because I love books about ghosts. So if you're on the hunt for a ghost book, I just wanted to chuck this one in here because, yeah, it's a fun one. The next one I want to recommend is an all-time favorite, which you guys are probably also familiar with, especially if you were watching my content last year, and that is The Bone Witch. This is one of my favorites. Like, look how much I have tabbed this beast. I love this. This has definitely got witchy, sort of haunty vibes. We follow Tia, who is basically a necromancer. We follow her growing up and the stigmas that she faces, because there's all these sort of different witches in this world, and she's the Bone Witch, the necromancer witch basically, and she is really feared because of her power, but also just dealing with the dead. It's sort of taboo, like not exactly, but there is definitely quite a stigma that she faces. And because of Tia's type of power and how powerful she is, from a young age she's taken from sort of a small country town that she lived and grew up in to like the larger city in order to train to become more involved in the politics of the world and the court, and to sort of be more useful, and for also just because of her power. I love this so much. The romance in this trilogy is like one of my all-time favorite romances. I love the way the story is told because you get tiny snippets of the future. It's not exactly a true timeline story, but you get like at the beginning of each chapter just like a little like page of the future, and you know in the future that things are very wrong because Tia is basically in exile for something she's done, so she's kind of like a villain. So it's sort of got this like villain origin story to it as well, and you follow her from when she's really young. And I think by the end of this book she's like 17 or something, so you're sort of up to date, but you don't really know where everything went wrong and why she's in exile. So there's also kind of this tension and worry, and yeah, it's just, oh, it's so good. Like, I always say I don't like two timeline stories, and I really don't, but the way this is done, it works so well for me because it's literally a snippet. Let me see if I can find a page. Like, see if you can see that there. That's literally like the future page. So it's really not too detailed, and it doesn't take away from the main narrative, which is why I liked how the two timelines in this was done. The next book I want to recommend is another ghost book. I love my ghosts. This is the Lockwood & Co series. The first one is The Screaming Staircase, and again we basically have ghost hunters, but we have a group of 3 teenagers who work as ghost hunters. I listened to the first 2 books in this series on audio last year and I really enjoyed them. I definitely need to try and continue. Hopefully like this October or spooky season will be a good time. And yeah, so if you're on the hunt for like a ghost hunting book, this is a good one. I will say it is an older series, so there is slightly problematic things, like not really problematic, but just things like old language things that you don't really see as much today, that you just go, ooh. It would just be something that would be edited out today. Like I remember there being like slight fat phobia and things like that, so just like heads up for that. But I really recommend this, especially if you're on the hunt for like a crew of like ghost hunting teenagers. This is a good one. Anyway, that is it for my Halloween spooky season recommendations. If you have any, please leave them in the comments below. I am definitely on the hunt for more, especially books that are more horror-esque, because I don't think I've read too many, so that's why there's not too many on this list. If you pick any of these up because of me, please let me know and let me know what you think. Otherwise, I really hope you're enjoying whatever you're currently reading, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!